that loud.
No.
Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. Could I have roll call, please?
You haven't checked in yet.
I don't check in.
Oh.
I'm the presiding. I'm not voting.
8 present, 3 absent, 1 presiding.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioners Anderson, Sorge, and Shea are excused from this evening's meeting. Just a quick update. I talked to Bill today, and he is probably going to go home tomorrow. He's going to leave the hospital, but then he has to stay in the Seattle area for about a week. So we're pretty excited about that. He sounded hopeful and very much better than the last time. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you. All right, would you please join Commissioner Thatcher and the rest of us with our prayer and pledge?
Fellow Commissioners, Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Thatcher. All right, at this time I would ask for an approval of the minutes that occurred at the regular meeting on September 21st, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I move to approve the minutes from the September 21st, 2022 regular meeting.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of September 21st, 2022 regular meeting. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? The clerk please record the vote.
8 yea, 0 nay.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion passes. Items not addressed in the agenda. We don't have any this evening. The Chief Executive's report. There is none since I'm not Chief Executive. Makes it easy for me. So we move on to the public comment on any items on the agenda. So if there's any public comment on any item on this evening's agenda, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
Hey there. Thank you, Chairperson Shaw and the city and the council. My name is John McKee, M-C-K-E-E. I work at Headframe. I'm here to offer public comment on specifically communication number 2022-434, which is the revision to the wastewater ordinance. And I'm going to read my letter into the record and then add a little color. So I'll do this really quick. So I wasn't able to attend the first reading. I apologize. I was actually in Grand Rapids on an install for one of our distillation systems. So I did watch online. You guys are great via YouTube. Keep it up. Head-Rated Spirits is 100% in favor of certain revisions to the wastewater treatment ordinances in place for Butte-Silver, specifically and especially with regard to fats, oils, and greases portions of the new ordinance. However, we have some specific concerns regarding the section pertaining to the fees for surcharge and enforcement levels for industrial users. Specifically, our new distillery at the Kelly accounts for 0.2% of the daily input to the BSB Metro plant. Said differently, we discharge about 12,000 gallons of the 4.4 million gallons a day that plant deals with. Our discharge can best be described as non-alcoholic beer. The discharge is non-toxic, it's not dangerous, does not contain harmful chemicals, and in point of fact, at our sewer outfall, which is a separate sewer connection specifically for this distillery, I'm proud to say I'm the only sewer connection in your district you can drink from. In the current proposed rate change in the 2022-11 proposal, the surcharge and enforcement rate suggests that Headframe will be paying the county $150,000 a month or $1.7 million a year to discharge 12,000 gallons a day. Said differently, as currently proposed, if it's implemented as currently proposed, it will mean that Headframe will be paying 25% of the entire annual operating budget of the Metro plant. We respectfully submit the Headframe's 0.2% discharge cannot possibly account for 25% of the entire budget of the Metro plant. We're well aware of the work that was going into the draft changes for the ordinance, and we've been asking to have a seat at that table with its drafting, especially as it relates to distillery wastewater, something we actually have a high degree of knowledge about. We weren't able to join the process at that time, and now the draft ordinance has created provisions that make the Kelly not financially viable. So I'll say it differently. If it's implemented as proposed, Headframe can't afford to operate the distillery at the Kelly. We have specific solutions to the issues, and we currently see them in the proposed ordinance, and we respectfully propose that the Council of Commissioners approve the ordinance without the inclusion of the surcharge and enforcement fees on page 30, line 9, thereby implementing the remainder of the ordinance immediately. This will allow for more time for collaboration between WET, Metro, the BSB pretreatment coordinator, and subject matter experts like us at Headframe to find a more proper solution to the problem created by the surcharge and enforcement fees in the proposed ordinance. The final solution to those fees can be brought back to the council and voted into the ordinance at any point in the future. For those of you who don't know me, I run rivers all year long, not just in the summer. I know the exact place where Metro's discharge, once treated, dumps into Silverbow Creek. It means something to me when I say that I care deeply about clean water. No one in any way should be allowed to discharge pollutants that would hurt the waters of Western Montana. Please see our letter and public comment in favor of preserving our waterways and ensuring that an unforeseen aspect of the proposed ordinance can be changed to more accurately reflect how wastewater in Butte-Silver should be handled. So that was my letter. I just want to give you a couple, just like I said, color, and then I'll just step away and say with my thank yous. Again, page 30, line 9 of that ordinance is exactly where these fees are, and all we're asking is to temporarily strike those, get your ordinance passed. You guys need it. We've been way too long without an enforcement for wastewater in this town. I don't disagree with that at all. But give us a chance to come back and actually find something that works, especially for us up at the Kelly. We have 30 employees. We've had a $10 million economic impact to the town in the last 10 years we've been open. We got your back. We're just asking you to give us a little more time to get this right so that we can continue to have your back. Sort of as a last little bit of an aside, just so you understand how this is, we're actually having problems finding vendors to sell us gear to clean it. Because when I give them my discharge numbers and my discharge rates, they say there's no reason I should be buying, and they know what this plant is here, this membrane technology that's at our new plant. They're saying there's no reason they should sell us a system. So I can't even get a company to sell me a system. So we really need to work on this because I'm at a place where we just can't financially run the Kelly. So I appreciate your time. You can call me anytime. You know where I'm at. I mean, I'm always at the Kelly working, so you can just give me a shout anytime. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Any other comment on any other item on tonight's agenda? Seeing no, oh, yes, would you like to make a comment? Come to the microphone, please, and give us your name and address for the record, and tell me which item on the agenda you might be speaking about.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jennifer O'Brien, and I'm president of Montana Craft Malt. And our address is 50 Sod Farm Road, and that's Butte 59750. And I spoke last time also, and I just wanted to strongly agree with what John was saying. We are also one of the businesses affected, and we're not at all against a fee structure being in place. Just the way it's constructed now will take us out too. And we care very deeply about this community as well. We don't mean any harm to the treatment system or to the community as a whole. I think there's a lot of ways that we can work together for mutually beneficial solutions, and we frankly need more time to work in collaboration with the treatment center and WET to actually come up with that. Again, the way the fee structure is designed today, it'll take us out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other further comment on anything on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, we will move along to Section 1. Well, actually, before that, Section 1 is bid openings, public hearings, and presentations, but we have a really special thing that we want to do this evening, so I'm going to move out of the consent agenda, item B, communications, item number 2, and this is communication number 2022-496. I'd like to move this ahead and have it right as we speak. This is Zach Osborne, BSB Fire Chief, requesting Council Commissioners' concurrence in the confirmation of probationary firefighters Ross Boggs, Connor O'Neill, and Marco Weitzel to firefighters. Once approved, they will start the new roles as firefighters on October 11th, 2022. And my communication was to concur and place on file, but of course we want to recognize all these fine gentlemen, and I would call on Chief Osborne.
For the record, Zach Osborne, Director of Fire Service. Madam Chair and members of the council, I'm here to introduce 3 of our probationary firefighters. We have Ross Boggs, Connor O'Neill, Marco Weitzel. They are less than a week away of finishing their 6-month probationary period with the fire department. They've completed all necessary work, completed all drills that is mandatory that we have them go through during those 6-month period. They have showed great determination on getting through this period. They're very highly motivated individuals that strive to be great firemen. Most importantly, they're just good citizens to Butte-Silver Bow. I said it earlier, I think we hit the jackpot again on these 3 individuals, and with your blessing tonight and your vote, they will go off of probation and become firefighters effective next week, October 11th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council members or comments? Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just a question and concern. You know, Mr. Boggs and Mr. Weitzel, I've heard a lot of good stuff about you guys. My deep concern is for Mr. Connor O'Neill. I'm kind of worried if we are making the right decision. I'm just kidding. I just want to I'll say it. I don't want to cry. I'm just really proud of you, buddy. I'm so proud of you. I didn't think I'd cry. Give me a hug.
All right. And Connor, we have to put up with his sense of humor every Wednesday night, so yeah, there you go. Okay. Well, are there any further questions? I congratulate you 3, and thank you so much for going through and sticking with everything that you've had to do, and we're just proud to have you on board. So, Commissioner?
Thank you, Chief
what's your
Executive.
name?
Our
Callahan.
Chief Exec, our Madam Chair, I guess, not Chief Executive. I just want to concur and place on file and approve Chief Osborne's approval of Mr. Boggs, Mr. O'Neill, and Mr. Weitzel.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur with the confirmations of probationary firefighters Ross Boggs, Connor O'Neill, and Marco Weitzel. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
8 yeas, 0 nay.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Congratulations. Okay, so we'll move back to section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. Starting with bid opening, item 1, communication number 2022-486, John Sullivan, Government Building Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to allow the request for proposals be opened on October 5th, 2022, regarding the Mother Lode Theater Fire Annunciation Alarm System Design Build. Manager Sullivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw.
Oh, yeah. And do we have proof of publication? County Attorney Joyce?
Madam Chair, we do have proof of publication, and it does appear to be in order.
Thank you. Mr.
Oh,
Sullivan.
that they came in. Okay. Well, good news. We have 3 people submit on this, so that's much better than what we've had. Okay. Thank you. Keep watching. So the first proposal is from Communication Research LLC.
County Attorney Joyce.
Madam Chair, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you.
So the first quote from Communication Resources is for installing fire alarm control panel, annunciator, fire alarm cable, horn strobe, smoke detectors. Bid is for $142,068, $142,068.
Thank you. That's $142,068.
That's correct, yes, Commissioner. The second proposal is from R&R Electric.
County Attorney Joyce.
Madam Chair, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
So R&R Electric bid for fire enunciation alarm system design build for the mother lode is for $389,268, $389,268.
Thank you.
And the third and final is from Granite Mountain Electric.
Madam Chair,
County
there
Attorney
is
Joyce.
surety in the form of a cashier's check in the amount of 10% of the bid that appears to be in order.
Thank you.
So Granite Mountain Electric, fire alarm enunciation. So fire alarm enunciation for a mother lode design build is $110,925, $110,925.
Thank you. Is that all the bids then? Any questions from council members? I think this just goes back to. All right, well, at this time, I would ask for a motion from my Vice Chair, Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to send this back to the Government Buildings Division of Butte-Silver with a recommendation back to this body.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to take these three bids back to the Government Buildings Department and await their response to this body. Is there anything on the question? All, would everyone please vote? And anyone want to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
8 yeas, 0 nay.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on now to presentations. The first item is communication number 2022-469. Kelly Sullivan, Headwaters RC&D Area, Inc., requesting Council Commissioners' concurrence to have representatives from the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, including Jason Saylor, give a presentation to the full council regarding the Brownsfield program on Wednesday, October 5th. Well, there she is. Kelly.
Good
Floor is
evening.
yours.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce representatives from Montana DEQ who will speak, as you said, on brownfields. Jason Seiler, Colleen Owen, and Jessica Smith. And Jason's going to give us a presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jason, sorry I slaughtered your last name. Okay, Jason Seiler. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Jason Seiler. I'm the Montana DEQ Brownfields Coordinator. With me today are Jessica Smith and Colleen Owen, fellow Brownfields Coordinators for Montana DEQ. And we just wanted to kind of give you an introduction to brownfields. I know some of you may or may not know a lot about brownfields, but we thought we'd take this opportunity with the newest grant awarded to Headwaters RC&D, a $1 million Brownfields Revolving Loan Fund. There's maybe, hopefully, some renewed interest in brownfields, and we're going to just kind of give you guys an introduction and then answer any questions, and hopefully this will help kind of spur some thoughts and ideas to help us identify brownfield sites, because both with Headwaters as well as Montana DEQ has received a significant amount of money, much more than we've ever received before, because of the new bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed last September by the U.S. Senate and Congress and signed by the President. We've received unprecedented funding in the brownfields world, and so we're ready to spend it. We have money in hand, and we're ready to help our communities that we serve. So with that, I wanted to start the presentation with a Camaro, as you can see. And you may be wondering, what does brownfields have to do with the Camaro? And that's a good question, but we'll get there, so bear with me. So imagine you're driving down the street, and you've always had in the back of your brain, you're like, man, if I could only find a vintage Camaro, that'd be pretty awesome. And you're driving down and you see this out of the corner of your eye, and you turn around and you're like, oh, that's the right era, but it's not quite a Camaro. It's a Mercury Cyclone. And you're like, well, do I buy this right now? It's like, well, it's $2,500. Is that the right price? Is that not the right price? And the first thing you're going to do, you're not going to break your checkbook out right now. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to walk around, check it out, see what it looks like. And you see, well, there's a hubcap missing, and the hood's probably aftermarket. So it's like, well, is this worth the $2,500? It's like, well, maybe not. And so it's that unknown. You don't know really whether it's worth it or not. And obviously, the next step would be, let's open the hood, see what you're getting into. And obviously, if it's the one on the left, then yes, $2,500 would probably be a no-brainer. The one on the right, it's probably time to walk away. And the whole idea and the way this ties in with brownfields is this car itself is sitting on a brownfields. It's this old gas station. It's underutilized. It's sitting there. Everybody kind of knows what it is. But they don't really know the history. And the idea is brownfields can help you open that hood, figure out if there's any petroleum, if there's any contamination, anything preventing the redevelopment of this property. And so this one was for sale, for lease, just couldn't get any buyers on it, and the owner didn't know what to do. And finally, we reached out to them. This is in Livingston, Montana, right on Park Street, as you come into town. And we reached out. We worked with the local economic development, similar to what you have here in Headwaters, to identify this site, reach the landowner. They asked them, are you having problems selling this site? And they're like, yes, we can't get anybody interested because they're all afraid of it. They're just terrified of what they would get. So we did the investigation. We confirmed that there had been no release. And within a matter of months, it sold, and now it's a new real estate office, right on Park in Livingston. It's kind of, obviously, it's a much better look to that community. But it's also, not only is it a better look, but it's also providing jobs and increasing the tax base. So that's just kind of the whole idea, general idea of brownfields. I will provide, this is the most words that we'll talk about, but this is the EPA's official definition of brownfields. It's a property where essentially the presence or potential presence of hazardous substances are preventing the expansion, reuse, or redevelopment. You can see here, these are 3 examples. You might say, yeah, the one in the middle, it's a brownfields because it's brown. And the one on the left, well, that's a greenfield, but it actually is a brownfield because brownfields is actually, a lot of times the way we describe it, it's the opposite of a greenfield. Greenfields are those areas that are maybe in the flats here in Butte that haven't been developed. It's undeveloped. There's no infrastructure. It's just crops. It's farmland. It's kind of virgin property that don't have anything like that. But the expenses to go out and take all your infrastructure, your sewer, water, roads that are invested, community resources that are invested to expand that property. Why not just invest a little bit of money into properties that have already been developed once and just need a little bit of public assistance to get them back onto the tax rolls? And that's the idea of brownfields. And so we have the Brewery Flats in Lewistown on the left. We have the Shelby Petroleum Refinery in the center, and then the Old Holy Rosary Hospital in Miles City on the right. And all of those have been redeveloped and are now actually resources to the community as opposed to a community liability. So brownfields and Superfund. For the longest time, there was a Superfund problem with brownfields, and unfortunately, the way the statute was written, brownfields were not allowed to be used within an operable unit of a federal Superfund site, and that was written in federal statute, and it was a huge hurdle for us in the brownfields program to help communities such as yourselves that are burdened with this operable unit on your communities. And I think when the folks back probably in the East Coast were writing this statute, they were thinking of kind of your quintessential Superfund site. It's a chemical plant on the Hudson River or something like that didn't really affect an entire community. Here you see the outline of the state of Rhode Island and how the Butte-Silver NPL site fits kind of just within the boundaries there. They had no idea that these were the size of the Superfund sites out in Montana. And so up until 2015, 2016, we would have loved to have worked on brownfield sites here in Montana, in Butte, but we just weren't allowed to statutorily. But with the great help of Headwaters, RC&D, and Butte Local Development, and ours, as well as our partners down in Denver, we pushed and pushed, and we said, this is not fair, this is not right. We have entire communities that are kind of saddled with, or you're removing this redevelopment tool from the possibility of their redeveloping their towns. Communities like Libby, East Helena, Black Eagle, Butte, Anaconda, it didn't feel right, didn't sound right, and so we pushed and pushed. And finally in 2016, EPA Denver made a legal decision that allows for brownfields funds to be used within operable units as long as the contaminant of concern is different in the ROD is different than the contaminant of concern of the brownfield site. So that's a game changer right there. And so what that means is it means sites such as these two here in Butte, the old property on the left, the asbestos in that, or the potential asbestos, could be addressed because asbestos is not in the record of decision for the Butte operable unit. Same thing with the gas station on the right. Petroleum was allowed. We were able to get petroleum eligibilities for these properties in Butte because, again, it's not part of the record of decision. So 2016 was kind of a game changer for brownfields, and it really opened up the possibility of doing fantastic work in your communities. This is the Nyhart Inconvenience Store, and I include that because it is the very first brownfields that we were able to use, or first site that we were able to use brownfields funding within an operable unit. This is in the Barker-Hughesville operable unit up in Nyhart. It was the inconvenience store, but it was a local mercantile store, and the owners were looking to retire. They ran a gas station a long time ago, but the owners were looking to retire. Everybody was afraid of purchasing it because of that gas station. And there was a local food co-op that were interested in buying it, but it's just that fear of the gas station and the liability associated with the gas station prevented them from going forward. We were able to use brownfields we were able to identify, there is a release there, but we were leveraged funds, so this was now covered by the Petra Fund, so the co-op moving in would not have to be saddled with that liability. And it also meant for the town of Nyhart that the only convenience store in the town of Nyhart, and within the matter of 45 miles, was able to stay in existence. And it would have, if that had gone away, I don't know if the community would have survived without that, if everybody had to drive to Great Falls or drive to White Sulphur just for a gallon of milk. So it was fantastic. It happens in big cities, but also happens in tiny little Nyhart, community of 98. So in brownfields, we say, and you can't, it's been, the presentation's a little off there, but there's the old adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, in brownfields, it's actually both. It's what you know and who you know. And so when it comes to assessment and cleanups of properties, reach out to us, reach out to DEQ, reach out to your great partners here at Headwaters RC&D. EPA is a fantastic partner, Brownfields program. We also work with DNRC quite a bit and other economic development authorities. When it comes to redevelopment, we kind of prep the site for redevelopment and then we hand it off to Headwaters RCD. They are the redevelopment experts. The things that they deal with, can't even imagine. But they also partners at HUD, Department of Commerce, USDA, SHPO, and then you guys are fantastic colleagues and partners in these redevelopments. And it does take a concerted effort to get these sites sometimes moving. So typically, if you have a small business, if you're a small business owner and you're looking at a property, typically these are kind of the 5 steps that you have to go through in order to get your site, get your business up and running. You're looking at site discovery, trying to find a site. You may have to do a little bit of planning. If there's some environmental concerns, if you're getting a loan, the bank will typically require you to get a phase 1 at a minimum environmental assessment. And then if you find something, then you might have to address it. And then after you've gone through all those 4 steps, then you can finally start working on your business. And the whole idea behind brownfields is that we can actually help with the first 4. And then that leaves you, the small business owner or nonprofit or city county, to focus on the redevelopment of that property. And so we take that hurdle, those environmental hurdles off the table and help you guys, help the developers focus on their properties. So we'll take you through a couple of steps or a couple of examples. When it comes to site discovery, what we first look at gateways to communities. What are you telling your community, or what is your community telling visitors as they enter your property, enter your community? This is the community of Harleton. They have a fantastic old locomotive right there in the center of town, corner of Central and Main. But unfortunately, for the longest time, you turn 180 degrees and you saw Bob's Chevron on the other side. And it was essentially a location where a hoarder collected old junk vehicles. And again, right on the corner of Central and Main. And that's really not the look that the community wanted. That was not the gateway they were hoping for. And so this Chamber of Commerce actually bought out this property owner. They bought the gas station knowing that they had brownfield support. And we were able to do the investigation. We were able to dig out the entire property. And now, instead of an old gas station, you have this community park, welcome park. And so that's kind of where we start. We start with the gateways. And then once we're in a community, then things start happening and people start talking and you say, well, what about in Harleton? What about the property? We kind of start driving around and we say, well, what about the property right next door to it? Because that looks like a gas station. And then 2 blocks down, you get another gas station. And then 3 blocks the other way, you get another gas station. And then people start really saying, wow, we're starting seeing these everywhere. Maybe we can get all, if we get all of these sites, imagine what we would be saying about our community. And is it a vibrant community or a dying community? And so it really starts getting people energized about what's going on in their community. And it's pretty fantastic. Some of the gateways that you may be familiar with. This is one site that we worked on for quite some time. We actually didn't spend brownfields funds on it, but we identified it in that site identification phase. It was like, this is the gateway of Butte, and Fortunately now, it's a fantastic coffee shop, but for the longest time, it was like, okay, what can we do? And so we worked with Headwaters RC&D. We were trying to use brownfields funding, trying to use any kind of thing, but fortunately, sometimes it doesn't take brownfields. If there's the right owner that's willing to take that leap of faith, then and it gets cleaned up all by themselves, then that's fine. That's a win for everybody anyway. And so, but this one is a great example of a gateway. And then as you come up in town, you might remember this Quality Automotive Service station that was just sitting there, and it was like, is that really the highest and best use of that property? This one is actually, but that one, the Automotive Service Center was a brownfields. This one is another brownfield site. This was the old Firestone, right there on Automotive Row, but then the Native American Indian Alliance bought it. Didn't realize, they were told at the time of purchase that it was clean, and unfortunately that was not correct. And so we were able to go in, do an investigation, found that there were still some vapors in the building that needed to be addressed. We were able to address those, and so that Native American Indian Alliance can use that, and for it to be a safe, healthy place for their clients. Other properties that we see a lot of in the brownfields world, and to kind of just start thinking about what's in your community, this is the old Anaconda Junior High. A lot of times new communities build new schools, but whatever happens to the old schools? What's the purpose, and what can be a repurpose of this? This one was for sale for quite a while by the school district in Anaconda. We were able to use brownfields to get it assessed, and now it's been sold. And the developer's thinking about trying to do some kind of mixed use or some kind of housing, but also businesses, which will be a great, not only does it get it off the city's tax rolls, it becomes a benefit to the community because it does increase the tax base. Another kind of common property are old hospitals. This is the old Memorial Hospital in Livingston, Montana. Again, you get new hospitals. We've seen a lot of new hospitals built throughout Montana, but what happens to the old one? And these old hospitals that were built in the 50s, they are bunkers. But that doesn't mean they can't be redeveloped. This one was bought by, we were investigated by Brownfields, and then it was bought by Homeward out of Missoula for an affordable rental complex. So they're providing rental units at an affordable rate in Livingston, where property values are going through the roof, and it's just no longer becoming affordable to many people there. So it's a huge benefit to that community. Once we find the site identification, we kind of move on to the planning, and we always try to identify as many stakeholders as possible. And this is what the city of Kalispell did when they received a planning grant. We do offer planning assistance, and city of Kalispell did this. In their core business district, they identified that they had the old rail line going right through town, but what else could they do with it? What else was that old rail line the highest and best use of the property? At one time, it serviced over 100 clients, businesses, but then when they first got this, it was 10 years ago, it was down to 3. And the community had to make a decision: do we keep this rail line in for three clients that intersects and interrupts the traffic to the entire community? And so they got a planning grant. They met with over 90% of the business owners in this district. And the business owner said, yes, get the rail line out of here. We need to do something else. And on top of that, they identified 3 other main priority sites that they wanted to address. And we'll talk about that later in the process. But in the meantime, this community was a huge community outreach effort occurred, trying to get what did the community want to see with these properties. And they identified all sorts of different alternatives and took the ones that were most requested and incorporated that into a great final plan. So on the environmental assessment side, this is a before and after picture of a brownfields. And the biggest question is this a success? And the answer to us, it was yes. It was a resounding success, because in the corner next to the speed limit sign, there was a Century 21 real estate for sale sign. And it had been there for about 20 years or 15 years. and you're like, well, it looks fine. There's nothing there. What's wrong with it? And that was that perception. Everybody knew in the community, this is on the west side of Helena, everybody knew in the community that that was the old Texaco. And everybody was afraid to death to touch it because of that liability. It was like, well, what are we getting into? And so we did a brownfields. We found 2 tanks, 2 small little tanks. If they had leaked, they'd leaked so long ago that Mother Nature took care of all the petroleum, so there was no contamination left above cleanup levels. And so we wrote a no further corrective action letter. And then as soon as we wrote that letter, 2 months later, Appleton Furniture bought it. They were the neighboring business, but they decided they had been eyeing it for years and years. They just never could commit to that, take that leap of faith. But as soon as we wrote that letter, they made that leap of faith. They expanded their furniture showroom and then also added a new warehouse. And that was 7 jobs and over $3,000 a month or a year in tax increases. So huge, and also kind of gave that side of town a facelift because it was just kind of looking a little tired. And this is bringing new life back into that area. Another one here, a little closer to home, is the current Copper City campus, but that one was sitting there. That's for most people can recognize that was probably an old gas station. But the biggest question was, had the tanks leaked? And if so, the DEQ, the petroleum side of things, didn't know if there were any tanks left. They didn't know if they had leaked. There was no records whatsoever, but it was prohibiting a pretty important redevelopment project. And so we came in, and because we didn't know where the tanks were, we took essentially it's a geophysical survey, but it's a fancy metal detector. Went around, identified, as you can see, we overlaid the map. We identified a couple of areas that looked like tanks. It allowed us to focus our investigation just in those areas, and we didn't find anything. All the tanks had been removed, all the piping had been removed. Again, no further action letter, and hopefully, and now it could be the potential, it is part of the future plans for the Praxis Center, which is going to be incredible. And it's just fantastic. And we are super supportive of it. EPA is also super supportive of this, so much so that in the course of, after we did the assessment, EPA brought in their own consultants to help with the planning effort of this area, as well as the automotive row, because we knew, working with Headwaters, we knew that if the Praxis Center goes in, then there's this huge potential for along automotive row to redevelop that and get into higher, better uses for those properties. And so we did planning. We had landscape architects, we had architects here, and they came up with a conceptual plan for automotive row, and then provided a kind of a streetscape rendering of what it could look like if it is redeveloped. And you kind of see those roll-up doors of the old garages. Now, if you have, everybody wants restaurants with roll-up doors, and so that's kind of the vision. It's not necessarily the final vision, but it's just getting the conversation started with what could be. Again, here's the Quality Automotive Service Center. That was we used Headwaters RC&D, used brownfields on that one. We did the investigation, found that there was based on the look of this property, you're kind of like, that might be a concern, but we didn't find any contamination and no asbestos inside the building, as well as no petroleum release on the outside of the building, which allowed the developer to quickly remove the building, get it cleaned up, and now you have the new Dairy Queen grilled chill in that upper area. Again, increased tax base, increased jobs, and gave that whole area a kind of a facelift and new life to that side of town, which is fantastic. Now, for sites that do need cleanup, this is another one in Helena that actually did need cleanup. It's kind of the most, and Helena is definitely not by no means perfect. As you come into town, our gateway was Planet Motors, and then pawn shop, and another kind of used car lot, and another pawn shop. So Helena definitely needed some attention as well, and there was this site here that they were looking to sell. And a developer was really interested in this, but they knew this one was not pristine. This one did have contamination, but we did use brownfields to identify how much contamination was there, as well as we leveraged the state's petroleum fund, which could help with the cleanup funds. And so they were able to perform the cleanup. And then, even though it was still some residual contamination, groundwater issues that we needed to monitor long term, we were able to place the wells so it wasn't blocked by the development. And now it's the new 1889 coffee house. So even in active release, this developer was able to take the leap of faith with brownfields to invest in this properties. And his goal was to cut off all the commuters coming in before they hit the Starbucks. He wanted to grab them 3 blocks earlier at the 1889, which is fantastic. This one's an old building. Brownfields can be used on petroleum sites, old buildings, kind of you name it. We kind of tackle them all. This was the old Arvon block in Great Falls. There was a local development group that was interested in buying a hotel or building a hotel and restaurant. And they were kind of torn between that greenfields redevelopment out by the airport, but they were from Great Falls. They wanted to do something to contribute to the downtown Great Falls, and they identified this building that used to be it was the oldest livery in Great Falls, hotel on top, stables underneath, but unfortunately in its time it lost that, and the most recent owner was the fire extinguisher supply company that had fire extinguishers exploded all over, and it had all sorts of asbestos and lead paint. But the developers knew that going into it, with the brownfields assistance, they could actually pencil out the budget of what liability they had, and they were able to receive a loan similar to what Headwaters recently received, a business loan. Private individuals can receive loans to help defer those costs. And so they were able to do the cleanup quickly and turn it into the Hotel Arvon, Celtic Cowboy. It's a fantastic Irish pub down below. And it's just brought new life. This is a block and a half away from the Civic Center downtown. Now people are staying downtown, eating downtown, living downtown, and it's kind of, you see that ripple effect in this area, part of the Great Falls. Other businesses are now starting to kind of put a little spit and polish on their businesses, or selling and to a higher price, and new businesses are coming in just because of this one success, which is pretty phenomenal. On the redevelopment side, we kind of do, like I said, we do a little bit of everything. Who's willing to buy a junkyard, especially a junkyard in the middle of a neighborhood? And it's like, well, in Missoula, land prices are kind of unbelievable, and for your entities that don't have a lot of money, such as nonprofits, they're really kind of stuck in a hard place, because how can they expand their nonprofits and provide services to their community members when the cost of properties are through the roof? And this is where brownfields can help, because we can identify these sites that are a bargain, for lack of a better term, because there's that perception of contamination. And this was the old Bakke Auto junkyard right in the middle of town, and the food bank was looking to consolidate its offices, Missoula Food Bank, and they identified this property, and we went out, did the assessment. We did find contamination in the soil, but it was just in the top 2 feet. And already in their plans, their redevelopment plans, they had already planned on getting rid of the top 2 feet anyway for site grading and putting in foundations. And so we were able to help them cover those costs with an RLF. They actually got a grant from the city of Missoula's RLF, and this was them scraping the soil, and now this is the new food bank, which is just a fantastic resource for that community. It offers classrooms, obviously the food bank side of things, but also kind of a play center for kids while their parents or family members are attending classes and getting service from the food bank. So it's such a key component that the food bank would have never been able to afford this property, this size property, and do this kind of building had they had to buy it at market value. We see that ripple effect on the north side of the Bacchiato. That was subdivided out, but then there was that northern stretch, and homeward, an affordable housing expert in Missoula targeted that. We were able to get that site cleaned up, and they actually used a bunch of trailers from the Bakken. After the Bakken boom, they brought in 6 trailers, 7 units, and cleaned it up, and now we have a tiny home community in Missoula. So 7 affordable housing. It's in a community land trust, so you're only buying the house itself and not the land, which makes it affordable. And it's provided 7 new homes for low-income residents in Missoula, which is fantastic. Getting back to the Kalispell, when they did their planning, they identified those 3 properties in the rail corridor. And so we used brownfields to do an investigation on the rail corridor, because that was a big question of what was on that rail line. And we found some contamination there, but not a ton, nothing insurmountable that they were able to address. And through their planning efforts, they were able to put in this Parkline Trail. And for the community of Kalispell, now community members are starting to realize the value of this trail. And instead of kind of a liability, especially safety liability of the rail line, now you have this trail, highly trafficked trail, that businesses are now starting to flock towards. And the city planner in Kalispell said now Kalispell has riverfront property, and it's right downtown. And so you have the Sunrift Brewing Company specifically put their business there 4 or 5 years before the trail line opened, because they knew once the trail was in, everybody will want to bike to that brewery. We also have the 3 green target areas. One of them was the old grain silos on the kind of the far side of that. This was the property there, if you know downtown Kalispell, and this was targeted. This was something that the community wanted to see their use change. It was one of the clients at the end of the 10 years ago that was still serviced by the railroad. But how can we move this CHS out of downtown, because grain trucks in downtown didn't mix in the heat of tourist season. And so now they have used brownfields. We did some petroleum cleanup. We've cleaned up some fertilizer. Here's all the metal silos are gone. And now a developer is coming in, and they are actually going to put a rooftop restaurant on top of the silos and have over 200 housing units. And the reason why they're doing that is because it's right along that trail, and they know that people are going to want to be on that trail, and it's just going to be pretty revolutionary for the city of Kalispell to see that. And the other 2 areas identified are also in the process of being redeveloped as well. So thank you for your time. In brownfields world, most people think a success looks like that. It's a pretty straight arrow. When things get a little squirrely, that's when we get involved, and we can kind of help get you through those complicated sites that may need a little more help than you realize before you get into it. But in the end, you're still in the same space, and it's still a success. And for the brownfields world, this is what success looks like to us, because we have helped communities large and small with breweries and restaurants and hotels and just kind of great places to live and raise a family. And it's just a great opportunity, and it's a great job to have. So we are, again, this is the Brownfields team. My name is Jason Seiler, Colleen Owen, and Jessica Smith. And we consider ourselves, even though we work for DEQ, we consider ourselves resources, and we are not regulators. So again, we're non-regulatory, and we just try to help, and we offer funding and environmental expertise and try to get these sites cleaned up. So with that, I think, again, thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and talk more about the grants that Headwaters RC&D received, or the ones that we've received that can help get these properties invested,
Thank you,
reinvested.
Mr. Seiler. Any questions for this gentleman here? No? I appreciate it. I remember when this first started a few years ago, and the Dairy Queen was one of the first ones to do, and then I always felt that that was just a win-win situation. They did the one on Front Street on the corner there. I think that was the first one as it turned into Harrison Avenue.
Right.
So it's great to have some other opportunities for getting some things done with DEQ's help and money. So
Yep. No, well, we're
All right.
happy to be here, and we really want to help as many communities as we can while we have the funding that we do. So,
all right.
looking
Thank you
forward to
very
it.
much. It's very informative. Appreciate it.
Great, excellent, thank you.
All right, moving on, we have one more presentation. This is item 2, communication number 2022-491. Maria Pochervina, the TBID Secretary, requesting Council Commissioners authorization for a presentation of the fiscal year 2023 work plan and budget for the Butte-Silver Bow Tourism Business Improvement District. And the second part to this communication is requesting a public hearing on October 5th tonight to present the fiscal year 2023 work plan and budget. We will begin with the presentation from Maria, and then we will go on to the public hearing. Thank you, Maria, for being here.
Hang on. Okay, well, thank you for having me this evening. For those of you that don't know, again, my name is Maria Porchavina, and for tonight's purposes, I am representing the Butte-Silver Bow Tourism Business Improvement District, commonly referred to as the TBID or the TBID. You have the same slides. Oh, and this is this little thing that which one goes which way? Okay, so I'm here again. For those of you that were here when I started doing these, the presentation was something like 30 slides long. I think that there were several, including chief executives, that fell asleep. Possibly, I know John Morgan, I gave a bad time to, so I pared it down considerably. So I'd like to go back and I like to reiterate and remind you where my funding comes from. There's 2 funding sources. One of them is bed tax dollars. When you stay in a hotel in the state of Montana, you pay 8% bed tax. In some communities, there is a resort tax, and that's something different. We don't collect that here in Butte-Silver Bow. Of the 8%, 4% is spent to promote tourism for the state of Montana, and of the budget, 22.5% is earmarked for CVBs, such as Butte, and regions of which there are 6 geographical tourism regions, and we sit in southwest Montana. Approximately, we will be receiving $125,000. That amount is a percentage of rate, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that quickly. But if guest rooms go up, guest room rates go up, we get more money. If occupancy remains the same or goes up. Whereas the tourism, the TBID assessment is $1 per occupied guest room. There is something that will come into play, I do believe, at how much it'll impact us this year. With both bed tax and TBID assessment, after 30 continuous days of stay with no break, no checkout, lodging properties no longer collect a bed tax nor that assessment. Now, with 1923 here filming, we will see some of that. What the impact will be, I'm not exactly sure, but if someone's there for 2 weeks, they check out or they're there for 30 days, 35 days, they check out, they come back 2 days later, again, the cycle starts, so the tax is collected again. So I just want to share that a little bit. You know, every month I get a report, the Smith Travel survey, and it gives me information on some hotels that report. If you're a franchised hotel, automatically the numbers are sent in. If you're an independent hotel, such as Fairmont Hot Springs, they send that information in on their own. So the information I'm sharing does not encompass all of our properties, but it gives us a pretty good sample. At the beginning of the year, we were on track to go ahead, and we were seeing continual increases in our occupancy, which was wonderful. And that was all the way through May. I remember going out to Fairmont and visiting with Steve at the early part of June, and him saying, Maria, I'm telling you that flooding in Yellowstone is going to have an impact. He was seeing it immediately. I wait for a report. He was seeing his bookings decline. And again, we did see that in the months of June and July, but rate continued to go up. So we were renting a few less rooms. We're talking about maybe 5% less, but we were getting a bigger bang for our buck. Less rooms, more money, cost us a little bit less for hoteliers in the end. Then came August, and what happened in August? Our rate went down just a smidgen, but our occupancy went up, and we can attribute that, I would say. I mean, there's other factors, but the big factor is going to go ahead and have to do with 1923. Our year-to-date right now is 60.2% based on the hotels that report, and our average rate is $128.96. Let's go back to, let me just give you that same data for 2019. Our average rate year-to-date was $161, so we have seen an increase in rate, which is good because that means more bed tax dollars. Okay, I'll continue to move these. Just a reminder, the funds, regardless of whether it's TBID or CVB, is for promotion, marketing support. It is not to be spent on brick and mortar. And the basic idea, although with bed tax dollars you will see money spent in other areas, but it is primarily to help hoteliers to either increase occupancy or increase rate. The basics, with regard to CVB dollars, primarily we were spending the money just outside the state of Montana. However, since COVID, we have seen a change where money is spending bed tax dollars in the state of Montana. I work for basically, 4 organizations if you take into account the board at the Chamber of Commerce. But I have my Tourism Business Improvement District, which is appointed by the chief executive and approved by this body, but those are hotel owners or their designees. I also have a CVB board, and then everything we do with bed tax dollars is approved by the Tourism Advisory Council, which is appointed by the governor. And there's a ton of reporting, and I go through a huge audit with the state of Montana. Again, we're looking to increase rates, and we're primarily looking to do it in those off months, September through May. And in many respects, we'd like to think that our summer is June, July, and August, but at the end of the day, it's probably a good 60 days. We continue to look for new events to get their footing, and yes, we continue to help existing events with promotional dollars. Perfect example would be the Montana Folk Festival. There are 2 funding cycles. One funding cycle ends the end of January with funds, with an award meeting happening in February. The same thing happens June with funding awarded in July. There have been special meetings where we have done some additional funding. I'm going to move ahead by one more slide. We are in the process right now of doing our collection period. Forms have gone out. I'm working closely with Dan Fisher. These are paid with the November property taxes. And then when most of the bulk of that money's in, then I go ahead and I contact Dan, I write him a letter, and I get those funds so I can deposit them in our account. I'm going to go ahead and go back to this slide. The TBID board has the money broken down into different market segments. And so I'm going to go through all of these, and there's a formula that goes with this. We always put $50,000 into admin. Special projects gets $50,000, festivals gets $30,000. Events and tournaments, groups and meetings, and leisure, that all is percentages based on after those other funds are taken out. And the board likes to keep a reserve of $25,000 at all time. Administrative, and I keep saying this every year, and you're probably tired of hearing me say it, as much as I love tourism promotion, I don't do it for free. So part of the administrative budget goes ahead and offsets my salary, as well as office expenditures. I'm very fortunate that I get to squat at the Chamber of Commerce. They don't charge me, they don't charge either organization any rent. Stephanie is very, very good to me. I have a great office. Of course, she does get some return on my squatting, but I do come under the Chamber umbrella as far as their corporation. Another part of our funding goes to Voices of Montana Tourism. It is not a lobbying organization. It was decided a number of years ago through the Montana Lodging and Hospitality Association that it was important that tourism as an economic driver be shared with not only just Montanans, but our legislators. Instead of always fighting at that 11th hour as we're coming into with this next legislative session, that we're out there sharing, that there's an organization out there sharing the importance of tourism as not only the jobs that it provides, but also as it offsets taxes for those of us that are residents in the state. Tournaments, we have been assisting with tournaments in a variety of different ways, primarily the Montana High School Association tournaments that are held at the Butte Civic Center. We've done a lot of work with the Maroon Activity Center, including bridge tournaments. Money has gone to Special Olympics on 2 different occasions. And then the TBID matched the Economic Mill awarded to Advantage Butte at 2 times the amount, not to exceed $25,000. So we're continually working to fund other events going on. I must have been, when I sent this off to get printed, I left off a slide and I realized it when I was sitting in the back. But you have to realize I was recovering from COVID. So one bucket that's not in here, I'm going through, where's my leisure, where's my leisure? So there is supposed to be a slide in there on the leisure, and I caught it, so let me talk a little bit about leisure. Leisure is the bucket where we are looking for that visitor. We're looking for the people that want to come here, not in a group. It's the moms and pops. It's people who, the families, those people who are traversing between Yellowstone and Glacier that are on the I-90, I-15 corridor. We spend money, and we spend money in combination with CVB dollars, and we really, it's weird how we can target now. Remember the days when you put an ad on TV or on radio, or maybe you put some print ads out. And I didn't bring my cell phone up, but where your cell phone goes, we know, and so we can target that. You're not going to see my ads. You're not my market. I'm not interested in sending you my ads. That's a waste of money. You're not going to stay in our hotels. So our ads are out and about. I know I get a lot of ads from Glacier Country and from Kalispell and Whitefish because that's a place that we've gone as a family. So I'm being fed those ads. I know when I go looking at a VRBO up in those areas, I see an increase in those ads. It's a little freaky about how we can do that, but those are the markets. We go after markets that are looking for history, that are looking wildlife watching, which is why people come to this area. Paranormal is absolutely huge. Is the sheriff still here? No, he's gone. Ghost of the Devil's Perch has been a big deal for us. We're going to see a boost, and if we don't, I'll just cry, but I know we're going to see a boost from 1923. There'll be some marketing along with that. Will that be TBID dollars? I'm not sure. Will it be CVB? But we would be silly not to capitalize on that. Being at the VIC, at the Visitor Information Center, the number of people that I get to interact with about Yellowstone, okay? When they were filming on Broadway, I was go uptown and watch, go uptown and see. I know there's some disappointment in the community that they are portraying us as Bozeman, but this is entertainment, people. Just be happy that they chose us and that they're leaving the money behind that they are. This is something that we can go ahead and we can capitalize on. There actually is a journal that's out there. There was only 2 left on eBay, where it's a book that's put out by a magazine by 360 Media. $12 here in the U.S. It's currently being distributed up in Canada at a lot of different locations. It's all about just the Yellowstone series, who the characters are, and the story. So we're going to capitalize on, but that'll be out of the leisure market. Groups and meetings. This has been one bucket that we have, it's taken a while to come back. And I think Steve Lubeck and if Rex Leipheimer were here from the Copper King, they could really talk about this a lot more. It's taken a while for meetings and even for festivals, but for meetings to come back. So we will offer assistance for bidding for conferences, looking to do more promotion to entice more meetings into Butte, and then trade show attendance. Through the organization at the Department of Commerce, it's now called Brand Montana. They're looking at doing more in the business travel segment, which will come into the meeting market segment. So hopefully we're going to be able to piggyback more onto that area as they move on as the big dog in the battle. Festivals, we continue to go ahead and promote, or to look for grant applications for festivals. And they generally happen during the summer, we know that. What I'm finding, and I'm really happy about, and I keep a schedule. In fact, I was talking to Steph the other day, I need the dates for Dream Big, if we can get that done. We're starting to see where festival dates are coming out sooner than what they used to be, and that's really, really important if we want to be out there even promoting it ourselves or talking about it. So we're starting to see those come back. Those are grant applications that then the board reviews. We have a pot of money that we put aside, or money gets put aside for special projects. And what are special projects? The one that I put here is that the TBID had set aside $200,000 as a one-to-one match to get another flight into Butte. That money sits off to the side, and that money is sitting there so that when that comes to fruition or whatever is happening down the road, we'll be able to pull the trigger on that money. A couple of other things that is coming under special projects. Butte, Montana Wildly Historic is the brand for tourism in Butte. We hired an agency, a marketing agency, to go ahead and come and work with us on that, so that came out of special projects. A new website for tourism promotion will come out of that. And lastly, we always like to have money in our reserve. What happens is that some of these buckets get hammered. Leisure has gotten hammered. The board is going to have to make some decisions as to where they want to move that money. And sometimes that money comes out of other funding buckets. Maybe it'll come out of festivals, maybe it'll come out of tournaments, but it's nice to have that reserve should we need it. Let me see if I had any other notes, because if you could see, I think that's about it. So I'll move to questions.
Thank you, Maria. Just it seems like yesterday we did this last year.
It's only
It's
because
amazing.
it's kind of the same stuff, just regurgitated all the time.
But thank you for the information. Anybody have any questions for Maria on the annual report? Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming up and seeing us. So how often can, is it just twice a year you can go apply for grants through just the TBDI or whatever?
Well, we have two funding cycles. So one is, goes out in January, closes January 30th with a meeting in February, and then we have one in June with funding in July. Now, there have been special meetings, i.e., and it's not in this presentation, but when 23 was coming to town, and boy, the entities all worked together to move events, right? I mean, we moved wrestling tournaments, and we moved, Billy worked and he moved hypoxia, and we put things here and we put things there, but the one problem was Justin Moore, and that could have been big and ugly. We had a special meeting with the TBID and came out with $10,000 in funding to go ahead and do promotion for that event. The number that I was under, that in talking to Bill Fisher, that if we could get to 3,500 tickets sold, that's about what he gets at his concerts. I think that they sold about 3,000. So Justin Moore was happy. Bill Fisher, the promoter, was happy. The booking agency was happy, because it was my understanding that they weren't. So we do special meetings, but what was happening before, it was haphazard. So having a structured funding time works well, but not to say that they won't convene for special projects.
Follow up, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. So then always the question with this is the $1 to $2, right? Or the $3. I'm definitely gonna make sure we have that discussion. My question with that is, we're the only AA city that's $1, unless I'm incorrect on that.
Nope, I think you are correct.
Is there, again, at this point, it's a discussion, and there's no way I'm sitting here telling you that we should up it. But then again, I'm going to ask you why shouldn't we up it?
Well, it wouldn't be a
Maria?
meeting if we didn't talk about it. A couple of things. When we renewed the TBID last year, That was something that was asked in my surveys to the owners. And I was surprised that having owners that own hotels here but have hotels in other cities, and I don't mean our local hotels, hoteliers, they were against increasing it by another dollar. The board currently is not looking at that. Now, let me talk a bit about the state. I would call it rollover or excess funds. They call it fund balance. That's the term. We have fund balances at the state level at tourism, somewhere give or take a few $1,000s of $10 million. Now, where did that money come from? It came from the fact that during COVID, so much funding, you weren't promoting. We have some fund balances as well. So we need to spend those down. Do I foresee us increasing it in the next year? Probably not, but if that is something that the board decides, keep in mind that the board of directors for this group are the very people who benefit, or the very organizations that benefit. So yes, we could increase it. We could send out that survey to our owners and ask, but having more money doesn't mean that necessarily we don't want to be throwing money away either. We're in good shape now. We have money that we need to spend down. When the need arises, we will go ahead and send that out to our ownership, and we'll make that move.
All right. And Maria, on that same subject, how do we compare with the other 5 major cities with the bed tax? I'm just a quick overview as far as
As far as bed tax or TBID assessment?
TBID.
Well,
so we have 4.
Naturally, you look at communities such as West Yellowstone or Bozeman, more hotels. Naturally, they're collecting more money. I'm pleased with the numbers that I see on my STAR report that I get. I'm thrilled with the hoteliers and the way how things are progressing, the increased rate, et cetera. I don't get TBID, I don't get collection reports such as bed tax dollars from other communities. So I can look at Brand, Montana, and I can look at all the other major communities, and I can look at what their bed tax, the 4% bed tax collection is. And we're seeing increases. We're doing well. So if we're seeing increases in bed tax, we're going to see increases in TBID. We hold our own. We're holding our own. We're doing well. Until the board makes that decision, and it wouldn't necessarily just be the board. We would have to poll our owners. They have a voice in this as well.
All right, thank you. Commissioner O'Neill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more question on that.
Sure.
So I hope this doesn't sound negative about Butte, Montana, but I feel like in some cases, we're always the last to do things, right? If you look, we're the last to get a skate park. We're the last to do a lot of things, which is okay in some concerns, whatever. I feel like if there's more money to throw out there, is there more people to come for? Respectfully, it should come back, and the hotel should make more money. I'm told that's obviously the idea. But if you have that one more dollar, not the bed tax, I'm not talking about I respectfully don't care about the bed tax. That's no control over this conversation. It's the dollar, and up it to the $2. Wouldn't that be more money, more advertising that you could throw out there that you'd make more money? Or is that just not?
A couple of
Maria?
things that I think we need to look at. Why do people go to Bozeman? Well, they're close to the park. They've got that great big airport. Missoula, kind of the gateway to Glacier as well as Kalispell. I was thrilled to see the Great Falls' numbers have been coming up as far as bed tax because they have been lagging. Helena is doing better as well. People just don't come here to stay in hotels, and I'll tell you what, that really hurts as a past hotelier. They don't come here. What are they coming here for? Yes, we have a lot of attractions and we have a lot of amazing outdoor recreation, but what's the key? What are we going to promote more of? Okay? So there's that sweet spot. and I think we're there. Now with regard to other communities in the state, it's amazing when I get together, and I'll be going to the Montana Lodging and Hospitality Association, and we'll be having a TBID, a statewide TBID meeting. I love to listen to them talk about Butte. You know, we have to stop thinking that we're behind, because we're not. When we put together an economic development team that goes over 2 administrations, actually 3 if you go back to Matt Vincent, because he started it, went through Dave Palmer's administration, continues with JP. When I sit in a room and I think, and I listen to people like Karen Burns and Kristen Rosa and Kelly Sullivan, and I think, why am I here? Because these people are so much smarter and doing so many bigger and better things than I could. But they know what I'm working on. I know what they're working on. There's no miscommunication. The relationships that we have in this community is the envy of the other big towns in the state of Montana. We are recognized, and I'm just going to talk about the film industry. We are recognized. We received an award for that at the governor's conference as the tourism, as the film-friendly community of the year. And there's reasons for that. Started at the Economic Development Committee that meets every other week, and because Jim Ward came forward and met with that group, and I give Karen Burns all the kudos in the world for making that seamless, and that woman works like a dog, and you know, yes, it's up in her district with 23 right now, but we get things done in that particular industry. You know, we have 23 here now, American Triage, a photo op, and I think we have something else coming on board. So we're actually ahead of the curve when you look at our ability to communicate and get things done. So again, more money. Would it put us out there more? It could, but what's bringing them here? We have to be cognizant and realistic about what it is here in Butte that we can sustain. Maybe that's the best way to put it. I don't know, Steve, is there? Don't look at me like I'm growing a horn. Yeah. Steve Lubick from Fairmont, he's my board president, so I asked him to come along.
Thank you, Steve.
Madam Chair, Commissioner O'Neill, for the record, my name is Steve Lubeck. I'm the chairman of the Tourism Business Improvement District. The question is related to the $1 or $2 and the why are we behind other communities and do we need to raise it? For the last 3 years, we have not been able to deploy the funds that we've been collecting, and we've been generating a surplus, as Maria has explained. A lot of that has to do with COVID. A lot of that has to do with canceled festivals and other events that just simply didn't happen in the last 3 years. In addition to the $200,000 that we're holding for the airport, which frankly I'm beginning to question whether or not holding that off to the side is in our interest at this point or not. We have $266,000 of funds to deploy, and we had the lightest grant application cycle this year that I've seen. And we've been trying to find ways to deploy the funds outside of our traditional grant applications, feeding money to the CVB, who is the marketing. TBID is not a marketing agency. We don't hire firms to deploy marketing programs, digital television. We fund it to the CVB, and they have not expressed the need for additional funds for additional marketing. In the area of digital marketing, $100 can reach tens of thousands of people. When you put $20,000, $30,000 out there, you're saturating your target audiences with so much digital advertising. I'm not sure another $20,000 is really going to get you that much more. I just don't, at this point, don't believe it's in the interest of the community to raise that, an additional dollar, to bring in an extra $250,000 when we're not able to spend the funds that we're currently spending. At the council, I'd say what I said at prior times. I would address the council too. If you see things that you would like us to be doing that you don't think we're doing, then that would require additional funds, and that's a totally different argument to have, a different discussion. But I'm yet to hear the council commissioners say, in addition to what you're doing, we'd like you to do these additional things. We're open to that discussion, and if there are constructive, concrete ideas on what that is, we certainly would take it under advisement.
Any further questions, Commissioner O'Neill? All right. Thank you very much, Steve, for that update. Any further questions from council members? Okay, well, Maria, at this time, shall we go forward with the public hearing, or are you ready to?
Yeah, what do
Wrap it
I
up?
need to do now?
Thank you very much for,
I just stand here, or do I go sit?
well, you pretty much gave us a staff report by giving us your annual report. So what I'll do is I'll just officially open up the public hearing. And so I'll read that portion of it. Is the public hearing is to request on October 5th a presentation of the fiscal year 2023 work plan and budget. Do we have proof of publication? County Attorney Joyce.
Madam Chair, there is proof of publication, and it does appear to be in order.
Thank you. We've already had our staff report. Any questions? We already did that through council members. So at this time, I will open up the public hearing. And I will begin with first call for proponents. Yeah, we have any proponents that would like to speak on behalf of this budget and work plan? Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. Now, at this time, I move to call for opponents. Any opponents that would like to speak against the work plan or budget? Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. Okay, closing the public hearing. Thank you, Maria, and your team for everything. Okay, moving along to our consent agenda. Section 2, we have A, 1 through 4, and B, 1 through 12. Are there any segregations or friendly amendments? All right. Going once, going twice. Okay, no friendly amendments or segregations. All right, Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve Section 2 of the consent agenda 1 through 4 and B 1 through 12 with the exceptions of communication 2, or number 2, communication number 2022-496, since we've already placed that one on file.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve Section 2, A 1 through 4, B 1 through 12, with the exception of item 2, which we already have concurred and placed on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
8 yay, 0 nay.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Okay, moving on to Section 3, we have ordinances and resolutions introduced to judiciary. We have 2, resolution number 2022-71 and resolution number 2022-72. They will be moved to our Judiciary Committee next week. Section 4, we have ordinances and resolutions for second reading. Item 1 is Council Bill number 2022-11, ordinance number 2022-11. Would the clerk please read the title?
Council Bill number 2022-11, ordinance number 2022-11. Ordinance amending Chapter 4 of Title 13 entitled Wastewater Treatment System and Chapter 8 of Title 13 entitled Service Charges for use of wastewater treatment system of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, and specifically adding sections 1304-105, renumbering 1304-110 to 1304-109, adding new sections 1304-110 and 1304-051, amending section 1304-350, amending sections 1304-681, 1304-684, and 1304-686, adding sections 1304-740, 1304-750, and 1304-760, and amending sections 1308-055 and 1308-057 and 1308-060, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place Council Bill number 2022-11, ordinance number 2022-11 on second reading and passed, having been fully deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move ordinance Bill number 2022-11 and ordinance number 22-11 to second reading. Would everyone, or is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Commissioner Callahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I totally agree with what we're doing on changing these amendments and getting this thing in control, but I am concerned about the couple businesses that have come here and asked if we could kind of put this on hold for a bit so they could sit down and have a discussion with the proper staff people. And I know it's certainly something we need. We all agree to it. They all agree we need it, but it definitely puts some concerns in. If we put these people out of business without sitting down, and I know they've had their opportunities and that kind of stuff, but maybe we need to give them the opportunity to sit down with the right staff and see if we can come up with something that will work with them. If Danette and them need to get up and speak, that's okay too, but I personally think we should give these people a little bit of time and work this out, or do what's right for everybody. I'm not saying that this isn't right for everybody, but we've had a couple times they've come up and spoke to us and, you know, voiced their concerns, and they're very good business people in town, and I'd hate to see them walk away and say, you know, we're just anti-business. We didn't want to work with them. And I know we've been told we work with them, been told on the Judiciary Committee that you've worked with them, but is there any reason we rush this? I know a year ago we tried to do some things, and here we are a year later that we haven't even dealt with that stuff. So I personally would like to give them some time to, and I guess Danette would like to speak.
Director Gleason.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Callahan, Danette Gleason, Finance and Budget Director. Eric Gonder is here. He's the pretreatment compliance officer. We also have a big team on Butte-Silver that's been working on this, and it just hasn't been a year. It's probably been 3-4 years or more that we've been working on these ordinance changes. Just want to clarify a few things that came before you tonight and then been heard throughout this last few weeks. Is that, number one, it's not a fee. It's not an assessment fee on these people if they're in compliance. If they're in compliance, we're not charging them these fees. The issue is non-compliance. We're no different than any other community that has a pre-treatment ordinance that we have adopted, and we've been working with experts. I think the statement tonight was we're the experts and call in the experts, but we've had experts. We've paid for experts. You've had an engineering contract with WET that are our experts, along with our team that are experts that have been working on these ordinance changes that are very, very similar to across the whole state of Montana. We also, and Eric can talk a little bit more on it because he's more involved intricately with this, but we have had these ordinance changes reviewed by our EPA representative. The EPA is telling us that these are acceptable documents and something they want to see on our books. I mean, and Eric can describe his more recent conversations with that as well. Also, the rates and fee structures are in line with the nation. I have a 2019 survey that anybody can come to my office and look at, and you can see the survey across the country. We're in line with what, if for non-compliance assessment is happening. And I think some other points that we made last week, and Public Works Director Neary is at a conference that, and why he's not here tonight with us, and Chief Executive Gallagher has been in a lot of these conversations too. You know, they've been ongoing talks. It's not nothing new. These ordinances and whatnot were started and on our books. They didn't have the fee structure built into them when these businesses started. So it's not new. It's not a business model that people across, even if they worked outside of Butte, if they worked in Great Falls, if they in other communities, they're going to have to comply with these same type of EPA guidelines. And since we have this on the books, now we have to comply with it. There are cities in Montana that because they're not complying, the companies and entities are paying $50,000 a month to be non-compliant, but the city of Great Falls is paid an EPA fine or got assessed. I don't know if they paid it yet, but they got assessed an EPA fine for non-compliant, even though they have people paying for non-compliance. The whole issue is that it's the whole system we have to look at. So we have to look at all the ratepayers, not just the 3 businesses that in town, industrial businesses in town that right now this complies with. And by the way, one is complying with it. It is all the ratepayers in Silver Bow County that are connected into the metro system. So on the $35 million in bonds that we have outstanding, we have ratepayers paying for that. They're paying for chemicals, they're paying for the plants, and they shouldn't have to pay for an industrial user's non-compliance. We just want compliance work done, and we've given them schedules, we've worked with them. I've not been like I said, in all these meetings. I've been in our own internal meetings. I've not sat at the table with many of these entities. Eric has. Eric has, our Metro Treatment Plant Superintendent, Bellandrini has, John Osterman. They've all been there with them trying to work through these processes, and we're just at a time where we've got to get in compliance. We can't keep going down the path and pushing papers that it's okay, that it's not compliant, because it's not. We have to move and get forward and get in compliant. It also impacts, and I think Christine from WET, who is one of our experts on our team, had mentioned last week in the judiciary, it also impacts our ability to add additional industrial users to our system. So that's economics to our economic development within our own community. So I'm just gonna let Eric add a few points on, but I think there's a lot of clarification that this isn't a fee that we're just gonna randomly assess to them. This is a non-compliance fee that gets assessed if you're not in compliance.
Okay. So thank you, Eric, and you could just introduce yourself
Hi.
to us again, please.
My name is Eric Gonder. I'm the pre-treatment coordinator for Butte-Silver Bow.
Okay.
I just want to talk a little about kind of the EPA part of this. Maybe I had a phone call with the pre-treatment coordinator for the EPA on Friday. He's our regional pre-treatment coordinator, just to kind of go over. I kind of explained to him what we were doing, which, as Danette said, all these ordinance changes and stuff, they went to the EPA and had to get approved before they came here. So they're, you know, completely aware of everything that's in there, and all of our numbers are, you know, directly in line with a municipality our size. Our local limits are, you know, matched. Those are all set. You know, when the treatment plant is built, you know, it can accept a certain amount of different wastes, you know, COD, BOD, you know, total suspended solids per day, you know, pounds per day and stuff. So that's allotted, you know, between residential users and industrial users, and that's, you know, this was all done, you know, before I came about, but that's where our limits are set at, and those are all EPA-approved pre-treatment limits. You know, those are set. We can't change those limits for a malt plant and a distillery and anyone else. You know, those are set limits for the city, and like Danette was saying, if they put in pre-treatment, which is what we're asking for, you know, if they implement things to lower their numbers to meet their permit limits, they don't have to pay any fees. You know, those are just, if you're above this limit, you know, that's where the fee comes in. And like she said, we have 3, and we have 1 industrial user that meets their permit every month. It's possible to do, it's necessary to do. I mean, and he kind of reiterated with me on the phone on Friday that if Butte-Silver Bow doesn't take care of these situations, you know, if we don't keep track of these industrial users, they will. They'll come in and they'll handle it themselves. So it's a lot easier for them to work with us. If they're going to be looking for sympathy from, you know, Al Garcia, they're not, you know, we're not going to get it. I guess a lot of times they're talking about flow, you know, we only discharge so much, you know, I don't think we should have to pay this. In this regard, you know, according to the EPA, it's not just based on flow, it's based on, you know, concentration. If we feel that what they are discharging to us could cause, you know, problems at our treatment plant, problems in our service lines, everything like that, they are a permitted significant industrial user. Their concentrations in a lot of these places are really high. Their flow might not be real high, but the concentrations within that flow are really, really high. And that's where, you know, he was saying that the prices, you know, how much they would be charged per month. That's because his concentrations are huge. You know, it's gonna, the plant is built to handle so much. If you get too much concentration from, you know, one place, you know, the life of the plant goes down. You know, I believe Bill said that, you know, it's taken years away from the plant handling all this extra, and so those fees are put in to help offset the costs, you know, to cover some of that. And like you said, if they meet their permit limits, there isn't fees. You know, that's only if you're going above those limits.
Okay, well, we're still on the question. Does anybody else have anything else to say before Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you,
Eric,
Chairman
by the way.
Shaw. I guess the question I got is, they're throwing around some pretty big numbers like this, 1.75 million, and, you know, I've got the chart up here, and as you know, I'm not anywhere near this, but I see like 25 cents a pound, $3 a pound, flow a nickel for 1,000 gallons and this kind of stuff. I mean, if they're having to spend that kind of money, they must be way out of compliance, the way I read it. So, I mean, he's saying 25% of our plant. I mean, you know, I'm a firm believer that numbers lie and liars number, and these things just don't work for me. So I don't get this 1.7 million here and 25% of the plant when I read these numbers here. So I guess I need to be educated a little bit, but I understand we're up against the blade with EPA, and I'm with everyone here, but I just don't understand these two coming out with these numbers that I don't know that are correct. Thank you.
Director Gleason, would you care to respond?
Sure. Madam Chair, Commissioner Fisher, I think Eric's digging through some paperwork here, but based on some of the numbers that have registered and seen, those are the numbers. So why not getting compliant with those dollars? I also want to point out, and I'm not sure the exact dollar amount, I can tell you the last allocation was $400,000 to one of these entities to try to work with them. So it's not that we have not been trying to work with them. They've received $400,000 from the TIFID to start working. And not just to start working, this is like the 4th year of working into it. Eric has documentation of all their meetings and their compliance and the compliance timelines that have not been met. It's not like we just threw this at them and said, meet it now. They've had years and timelines of certain projects, of certain phases of the projects that we asked them to complete, or certain plans, just a plan to be submitted to us by certain deadlines that have not been, those deadlines have passed. They've not been met. We're actually to a point where in some communities, in their ordinances and in their structures, they can shut it down. They can say no more feeding to our plants. We are working with them, and I think that this council needs to understand that it's been an ongoing working process for a long time, and now we're at a point where we can't continue to play. You know, we can still meet with them. We'll definitely meet with them. Eric and the team are phenomenal. Public Works Director Neri constantly meets with them. I know Chief Executive Gallagher's had numerous meetings with them all. And so we'll continue to meet with them, but we also have to get them in compliance, because what if another industrial customer wants to come in onto our system? Then what do we do? And what do we say when our lift stations are clogged and they can't function and can't work to all the other users of the system? Because we have two entities that are causing the issues, or when we have to do certain procedural things with our crews, our metro crews. They can't just go pop off a manhole, because if they do, they could die. So those are things that we have to look at too as a whole. We don't just look at, that's what these compliance ordinances do, and that's what the EPA wants us to do, and that's what we want to do. We want our employees to go home safe at night and to their families. And we want all the users of the system to be treated equally. And that's basically what we're trying to do here with these ordinance changes.
All right. Eric,
guess-
did you want to just quick answer that question that Commissioner Fisher had?
I guess, Mr. Fisher, part of I guess what you're asking is why they would be paying so much. And I guess just a quick example, I talked to Great Falls last week, their pretreatment coordinator, just to get a kind of an idea of where they are on some of their industrial users. And on, say, BOD, just one of our parameters, our limit is higher than Great Falls, and our fee charge is about almost 10 cents less than theirs. So that 25 cents, that's right in line with everybody else in Montana. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest, we're kind of right in the middle. And the reason theirs would be so much is because Our limit on BOD is 300 milligrams per liter. Some of these samples that we're getting, we have 4 or 5 different samples. They send in samples to Energy Labs. We get the results back. We've taken samples. The limit's 300. Some of their numbers are upwards close to 100,000. That's where the problem comes in, and our plant is not, can't handle those kind of numbers. That's where he's getting the 1.7 million, is because, yeah, that's what it would be if, and we have him on a compliance schedule, so we're giving him time to put in pre-treatment. We didn't just go say, okay, these fees are gonna go through, you're gonna start paying them. No, we gave some other places some time to implement pre-treatment. It's kind of on a scale, you have a couple months, we'd like to see this done. A couple months, you need to lower this, couple months, and that's where they are too. There was no intention of directly going in. They're on a compliance schedule, it's in their permit. And so if they implement pre-treatment, if they lower some of these numbers, we don't tell them how they have to do it or, what they need to do exactly. We just tell them, you have to meet your permit, you talk to engineers, you do this. If you have to have holding tanks for your waste and treat it with chemicals or whatever you have to do before it's discharged. But I mean, that's where that is. And the, story of being able to drink right out of the discharge, if you want to drink a pH that's 3.1, I wouldn't recommend it, but that's what the discharge is, because I was up there last week and checked it again, and EPA, I have it right here on the document, they don't even want you discharging less than 5. They're permitted for above 5.5 and below 9, and their pH is right around 3. And that's just pH, that's not talking the BOD numbers, the TSS numbers. That's where the high price comes in, if that answers your question.
Commissioner Callahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to respond. All I asked was that we make sure that we work with these people, and I understand now that that's what you're working. I was at the judiciary meeting last week, and I heard all that to net. I'm not here to try to get our people killed. I'm not here to try to have our employees get injured. That wasn't my comment. I just want to make sure we give everybody, and I know you've given them a more than a fair chance, but you didn't say once we pass this, it's automatic from here on, they're going to get fined every time they're not in compliance. All I asked was we make sure that we can work with these people to get them where they want to be or need to be, and where our taxpayers and everybody don't get stuck with the bill. That wasn't my intention, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in closing, the two industrial users we're talking about, Butte-Silver Bow's been very good to them financially through the years. And as of today, as far as I know, we're still very good to them. I mean, where they're located, what they're doing in our community. I mean, Butte-Silver Bow has well paid their fair share, and it saddens me to see these people come back to us when we're up against the blade with the EPA to come and state for us to more or less give them one more handout. So that's just a closing statement. Thank you.
All right. I am going to close the question portion of this, and would everyone please vote? We are on the Council Bill 2022-11 to move it to second reading. And I might add that this is simply going to judiciary next week. It can be held again. It could be moved to final, whatever you folks decide. So I would call for that. And would everyone please vote? Everyone has done that. No one wants to change their vote. Would the clerk please record the vote?
8 yea, 0 nay.
8 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes to move this ordinance on to second reading. Section 5, pardon me. Section 5 is ordinances and resolutions for final reading. Item 1 is resolution number 2022-70. Would the clerk please read the title?
Resolution number 2022-70, a resolution authorizing and approving the sale of the city county of Butte-Silver Bow of the real property described as the east 37 feet of lot 20 and all of lot 21 and the west 35 1/2 feet of lot 22 of block 12 of the Butte Townside addition located in section 13, township 3 north, range 8 west, within the city county of Butte-Silver Bow, Montana, to the Thornton Group in accordance with the provisions of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you, Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place resolution number 2022-70 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move Resolution 2022-70 to final reading. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
8 yea, 0 nay.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. All right. Moving on to the calendar of and other meetings and events, please take note. We'll move on into the public comment on any matter not on the agenda. I don't see anyone out there commenting this time, so anything else to come before us this evening? Thank you all for attending tonight, and I would just move for an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Would everyone please say aye? Aye, nay? Okay.